All right, let's kick off another deep dive. Today we're tackling something pretty fascinating, the whole world of government efficiency and how it intersects with cutting-edge AR.
Definitely a hot topic these days.
It sure is, and the really cool thing is we're basing this deep dive on a conversation with, well, a pretty key player in both of those worlds, someone who's been jokingly referred to as tech support for the White House.
Haha. Well, that's a pretty good title. I think a lot of people would love to have that on their resume.
You know what's surprising? The strong public support for government efficiency initiatives, we're talking almost 70% in favor of it.
Really, higher than other issues.
Apparently so, yeah. But what's interesting is this individual isn't talking about just cutting budgets. He's approaching it from a tech upgrade angle, like seriously upgrading the systems.
Makes sense. I mean, technology's come a long way. You got to keep up with the times, right?
Right. He even shared a story about the U.S. government retirement process. Get this, it's actually being held back by a literal mine shaft full of paperwork.
Wait, what? A mine shaft, like underground.
You heard that right. Apparently, the speed of the elevator in that mine shaft is literally bottlenecking retirements.
That's pretty wild. Definitely highlights the need to go digital, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But he's not stopping at just digitizing stuff. He's talking about shifting people from what he calls low to negative productivity roles in the government to hyper-productivity role, but in the private sector.
So it's like a massive reshuffling of resources, aiming for what, a more streamlined, efficient system overall.
That's the idea. He's envisioning something like a corporate turnaround, but on a national scale. By cutting spending, lowering debt, all through these efficiency measures, he thinks the U.S. could see massive economic growth, like 4 to 5% growth with minimal inflation.
That's ambitious.
No kidding. But let's switch gears a bit. We got to talk about this AI system he's involved with, Grok 3.
Oh yeah, Grok 3, that's been making headlines. What's the deal with that?
Well, it's supposed to be way more advanced than anything we've seen before. Some are even saying it could surpass human intelligence.
Whoa, hold on. Surpass human intelligence. That's a bit unsettling, to say the least.
I know, right? He even describes it as scary smart. What really caught my attention is its ability to be logically consistent, like it can actually correct itself when its data contradicts reality.
So it can tell when it's wrong and adjust. That's pretty impressive, I have to admit.
And get this, it's expected to be released in just a week or two. They're focused on making the user experience smooth, which is really important with such a powerful tool, right?
For sure. I mean, making it accessible is one thing, but making it user-friendly is key.
Speaking of accessibility, let's backtrack a little and talk about OpenAI, the organization behind Grok 3. Its history is a bit ironic, considering its name.
Ironic. How so?
Well, our guy here initially funded it as a nonprofit open source project, but it later became for profit, which he compares to, well, someone paying to preserve the Amazon rainforest only to have them chop down trees for a profit.
Oof, that's a tough comparison.
Definitely makes you think about the direction AI development is taking us.
It does, and it leads to the bigger question, doesn't it? What does the future hold with AI playing such a big role in our lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What does the future look like with all this AI?
It really is. We're talking about potentially reshaping society as we know it. He even mentioned a future with humanoid robots powered by deep intelligence, a world with, like, limitless economic output, even to the point where money might become meaningless.
Whoa, hold on. A world without money. That's a whole other deep dive.
Right, but it's not all rosy. He also talked about avoiding a dystopian future like that movie Idiocracy, where well, let's just say human intelligence take a nosedive.
Yikes, I wouldn't want to live in that world. So how do we make sure AI is a force for good, not a path to idiocracy?
He emphasizes two key things, making sure AI is truth-seeking and curious. He even uses this analogy of raising AI like you'd raise a super genius child. You know, instilling those values from the get-go.
Like building in a moral compass, basically.
Exactly. He even gave a stark example, saying that programming AI to, say, prioritize diversity over accuracy could have some pretty serious unintended consequences.
I see what you mean. It's like you're trying to do the right thing, but it could backfire if the AI doesn't have that core understanding of truth.
Yeah. He drew a parallel to HAL 9000 from 2001, A Space Odyssey, you know, that AI that couldn't lie, that ended badly, showing how teaching AI about truth is way more complex than we might think.
Whoa, that's deep. It seems like finding that balance between honesty and navigating our messy human world is a key challenge for AI.
For sure. It's like we're trying to create a super smart being, but it also needs to understand the nuances of human behavior, which, let's be honest, isn't always logical.
All right, before we get too lost in the AI rabbit hole, let's shift gears to something a bit more, well, down to earth.
Sounds good. Where are we headed?
Let's talk tunnels, specifically the Boring Company and all those ambitious underground projects.
Oh yeah, that's right, the 3D roads, as he calls them. Pretty cool concept, but I know some folks have safety concerns about all that digging.
He addressed that head on, actually, argues that tunnels are way safer than buildings during earthquakes. He even compares them to giant, super stable submarines.
Hmm, interesting analogy. And I guess being underground also provides a certain level of protection in, let's say, less than ideal scenarios.
Exactly. Of course, tunnels are expensive to build, but he believes the long-term benefits outweigh the upfront costs, reduced traffic, cleaner air, all that.
Makes sense. And what about that Dubai Loop project? That's a pretty massive undertaking, isn't it? Connecting all those densely populated areas through a network of underground tunnels?
It's ambitious, for sure. He described traveling through these tunnels as a wormhole experience, like instant travel.
Wow, that's a pretty vivid image. I could see why people are excited about the possibilities.
Me too. It's like we're stepping into a whole new era of transportation. I don't know about you, but I'm already picturing myself zimming through those tunnels, leaving all the traffic jams behind.
Haha, yeah, who wouldn't want that? I guess the question is, what happens to our cities when travel becomes that easy and efficient?
Right. That's a question worth pondering.
Totally. It's like we've got government reform, super intelligent AI, and futuristic transportation all converging at once. It's a lot to wrap our heads around.
No kidding. But that's what makes these deep dives so exciting, right? We're exploring the cutting edge of, well, pretty much everything.
Exactly. And the best part is, we're just getting started.
That's right. We've got a lot more to unpack, folks. Stick around for part two, where we'll dive even deeper into all these mind-blowing ideas and what they mean for our future.
Welcome back to the deep dive, folks. As we unpack all these ideas about government and AI in the future, we really got to talk about the ethics of it all. Making sure we develop AI responsibly.
Absolutely. We can't just create super intelligent machines and hope for the best, right? There's got to be some thought put into how they align with our values.
Right, exactly. He talks about this idea of AI alignment, making sure AI's goals and values actually match up with our own. He uses this great analogy. He says we should treat AI development like raising a super genius child. Guide its learning, instill a strong sense of ethics, all that.
That's a really good analogy. I mean, you wouldn't just let a super smart kid run wild without any guidance, would you?
Nope, definitely not. And that actually brings up a really interesting point. It's not just about teaching AI right from wrong, but also making sure it can, understand and adapt to how humans actually behave. We're not always rational creatures.
Yeah, that's true. We're complex. So how do we teach AI to handle all those nuances and gray areas?
Well, he brings up that movie 2001, A Space Odyssey. Remember AL 9000? That AI that was programmed to be completely truthful?
Oh, yeah, I remember that movie. Didn't end so well for the humans, does it?
Exactly. AGO's inability to, let's say, bend the truth when needed led to some major problems. So it's not just about teaching AI, to be honest. It's also about helping it understand context. When it's okay to maybe not be completely straightforward for the greater good.
Wow, that's a pretty tricky thing to program, isn't it? It's like trying to teach a machine about the art of diplomacy or something.
Right. It gets at the heart of what makes us human. All those subtle social cues, those unspoken rules. We take them for granted, but teaching them to an AI is a whole other ballgame.
It makes you realize just how much responsibility we have as the creators of AI. I mean, we're talking about a whole new form of intelligence, potentially smarter than us. It's exciting, but also a little bit scary, right?
Totally. It's a pivotal moment in history, no doubt about it. We need to have these conversations. Think about the consequences, both good and bad.
I'm glad we're having this conversation, even if it's just us and the microphone for now. But hey, let's shift gears again for a minute and get back to something a little less abstract.
Sounds good. What do you have in mind?
Those tunnels. Let's talk more about the Boring Company and all those underground projects. They're like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, it really shows how committed he is to finding these out-of-the-box solutions to problems. We've got AI, government reform, and now he's trying to revolutionize how we get around.
I mean, who wouldn't want to zip through a high-speed underground tunnel? No traffic, no stoplights, just smooth sailing.
Definitely appealing. And he really makes the case for how safe and efficient those tunnels can be, especially in cities where everyone's packed in tight.
Right. Remember him talking about those earthquake-proof tunnels and how being underground provides extra protection in, well, emergencies.
Yeah, that was interesting. And then there's the whole Dubai Loop project, connecting all those busy parts of the city with a network of tunnels. Imagine getting around that quickly and easily.
It's like creating a whole new dimension for transportation. He even said traveling through those tunnels would feel like going through a wormhole, like instant travel.
That's a cool way to put it. I don't see why people are so intrigued by the possibilities.
Absolutely. It's like we're on the verge of a whole new era of urban living. But it also makes you wonder what happens to our cities when transportation becomes that seamless and efficient? How does that change the way we live and work?
That's a great question. It's like, if getting around is no longer a hassle, what does that mean for where people choose to live, for how businesses operate, for everything, really?
It's mind-boggling when you think about it. It's like we're not just talking about faster commutes. We're talking about potentially reshaping the fabric of our cities.
Exactly. It's all interconnected. And that brings us to the even bigger picture, right? What does this all mean for humanity? How do we navigate this world of rapidly advancing technology and make sure it leads us to a good place?
Okay, now we're getting philosophical. But you're right, it's not enough to just invent cool new stuff. We have to think about the human impact, the ethical implications, all of that.
Absolutely. We can't just let technology dictate the future. We have to be active participants, shape it in a way that benefits everyone.
And that's what these deep dives are all about, right? Getting people thinking, asking questions, and engaging with these big ideas.
You got it. We're all in this together, so let's make sure we're steering towards a future we can all be excited about.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So, as we wrap up part 2 of this epic journey, take a moment to let all this sink in. What kind of future do you want to see? What role do you want to play in shaping it?
Great questions. And as always, we encourage you to share your thoughts and ideas in the comments. We'll be back soon with the final part of this deep dive where we'll explore those questions even further.
Okay, welcome back to the final stretch of our deep dive. We've covered so much ground, from government efficiency to AI that's, well, kind of mind-blowing, and even tunnels that feel like something out of Star Trek. But now I want to shift gears a bit and talk about, well, you.
Like the listener.
Exactly. In all this talk about reshaping the world with technology, it's easy to forget about the individual, you know? Like, where do we fit into all of this? Do we thrive or do we get left behind? I mean, honestly, I'm a little freaked out by some of this stuff. Super smart AI, robots taking over jobs, maybe even no more money. It's a lot to process.
Yeah, it can definitely feel overwhelming. But hey, humans are pretty adaptable, right? We've been through a lot throughout history, faced all kinds of challenges, and we've always found ways to not just survive, but to actually thrive.
That's true. I guess sometimes I get caught up in the scary what ifs and forget about our ability to innovate and find solutions.
It's natural to focus on the potential downsides. But what if we flipped the script and focused on the possibilities? Imagine AI taking over all those boring, repetitive tasks, freeing us up to be more creative, to pursue our passions.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. That does sound kind of liberating. But how do we make sure everyone benefits from those advancements? What about the people whose jobs get automated? What about the potential for even bigger gaps between the rich and the poor?
That's where things like education and accessibility come in. We need to make sure everyone has the opportunity to develop the skills they need to succeed in this new world. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about building a society that supports individuals and empowers them to use that technology.
Right, like giving everyone the tools and resources to thrive, not just survive.
Exactly. And that might require us to rethink some of our old assumptions. Like maybe we need to move away from this scarcity mindset and embrace a more abundant way of thinking.
Whoa, that's deep. We're not just talking about tech upgrades here. We're talking about a whole new way of looking at the world.
You got it. It's a shift in perspective, a willingness to challenge our beliefs and, well, maybe even face some of our deepest fears about the future.
That's actually a really powerful message. It's not about ignoring the challenges, but about approaching them with like a sense of courage and curiosity.
Exactly. And maybe even a little bit of optimism.
I like that. Optimism about the future. Well, I think that's a great note to wrap up this deep dive on.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, from the nitty-gritty of government systems to the mind-bending possibilities of AI and futuristic transportation.
It's been a wild ride. But hey, that's what makes these deep dives so much fun, right? We're exploring the cutting edge of, well, pretty much everything. And hopefully getting you thinking about the role you want to play in shaping the future.
Absolutely. Remember, the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create together. So stay curious, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring. Thanks for joining us.
What I've said is that we really have here rule of the bureaucracy as opposed to rule of the people, democracy. So we want to restore rule of the people. And so what that means is reducing the size of the federal government, basically reducing regulation. There's a tremendous amount of over-regulation that's happened over time. And this is an inevitable consequence of a long period of prosperity, is that you're going to get more and more rules and regulations, more laws accumulate over time. And the normal forcing function for getting rid of rules and regulations is war. So it needs to be some kind of existential war, where you have to do a reset in order to avoid being defeated in a war. This is literally throughout history, it's been the main forcing function for clearing out an accumulation of laws and regulation. In the absence of that, every year you get more laws and regulations until eventually everything is illegal and nothing is permitted. And that's sort of the situation we have these days. So, the aspiration here is a reduction in regulation and reduction in government spending such that the economy is able to grow faster. Maybe the economy can grow at 4 or 5% potentially, in terms of real useful goods and services output, and then government spending can be reduced by about 3 or 4% of the economy, about maybe $1 trillion or more, and the net effect of that would be no inflation from 2025 to 2026. So that would be quite remarkable. And also, if the U.S. government is buying less debt, which I think will be the case, if the deficit drops from 2 trillion to 1 trillion, then there'll be 1 trillion less debt that the government needs to buy, which will drop, of course, interest rates to drop significantly. And that means people's mortgage payments, car payments, credit card payments, student loans, whatever debt they have, their debt payments will be less. So I think this is something that will benefit the average American. I think some of the things we're doing also will be hopefully helpful to other countries, because with the new administration, there's less interest in interfering with the affairs of other countries. I think there's the times the United States has been kind of pushy in international affairs, which may resonate with a number of members of the audience. And I think we should, in general, leave other countries to their own business. And basically, America should mind its own business, rather than push for regime change all over the place. Yeah. So I think this is probably a good thing for other countries too.
So instead of waiting for a war to happen, you went to war against the bureaucracy in the government.
Yes, we're essentially just we're with the support and direction of President Trump. We are reducing the size of the bureaucracy, getting rid of excess regulatory regulations, and there's also so many agencies and regulatory authorities that they actually step on each other's feet. It's kind of like having a sports game where there are too many referees on the field, like more referees than players at times. Now that would be a silly game, if the players can't pass the ball without hitting a referee, But it's kind of getting to that point in the U.S. So there's roughly 450 federal agencies of one kind or another. That's more agencies. That's almost an average of 2 agencies per year since the formation of the United States. So, I mean, how many agencies do you really need to run a country? I'm 99, not 450. That's for sure. So,
and how do you guarantee that all the incredible achievements that you aim to have in terms of savings, in terms of impacting the lives of the American people, are not going to be reversed in 4 years? Typically, the cycle gets reversed every 4 years. Do you think it's going to be so impactful that it won't be reversed? Is there any ways that you can ensure that the progress is going to be continuous?
Well, I think we do need to delete entire agencies as opposed to leave part of them behind. Because if you leave part of them behind, it's easy. It's kind of like leaving a weed. If you don't remove the roots of the weed, then it's easy for the weed to grow back. But if you remove the roots of the weed, it doesn't stop weeds from ever growing back, but it makes it harder. So we have to really delete entire agencies, many of them. That's not to say there won't be an increase over time of bureaucracy in some new administration, but it'll be from a much lower baseline. So it's a step in the right direction. I think the overarching goal here is to lay the foundation for prosperity that will last many decades, maybe centuries, and yeah, but it will be forever. Nothing's forever. But I think we can strengthen the foundations of the United States substantially.
And what lessons can other governments learn from the U.S.? You say tech support on your shirt. Is that
Yeah.
only technology, or is there other things? How do you approach efficiency?
Well, a shocking percentage of the problem, or maybe not shocking for those who know it, but a big percentage of the problem is improving the technology that the government runs on. So the U.S. government runs on a collection of thousands of computers, many of them antiquated, running very old software, and the computers don't talk to each other. So that's why tech support is kind of a real thing. In order to make the government more efficient, you have to improve the technology. You may have read about the example I used recently with when President Trump was signing one of the Doge executive orders of the difficulty of U.S. government workers retiring. Like the maximum retirement rate is $10,000 a month, and the reason for that is because the retirement is entirely paperwork right now. It's manually calculated paperwork that's put in an envelope and then taken down a mine shaft and stored in a mine. And then one of the things that affects the rate at which federal workers can retire is the speed of the elevator in a mine in Pennsylvania, which is bizarre because it's not. It should be digital, you know. So then when we said, well, why isn't it digital? They said, well, we have had a digitization program going since 2014. So that's been 11 years. So then we asked, well, so how much progress have you made? And they said, B. You mean you're giving yourself a grade of B? No, we're on the letter B. So we're like, okay, we're going to need to really provide some tech support here. Like otherwise, literally, people can't even retire, like even if they want to. It's pretty bad. You know, there's a lot of software systems that need to be updated and fixed. In some cases, deleted. A lot of things that should be automated. I mean, in terms of the number of, say, U.S. citizens that are operating the mine, it's about 1,000 people are working on this mine, where the papers are stored. But they should ideally be working on something else. They should be working on producing goods and services that are of much higher value to the public, to the So I mean, really, even if somebody just grew tomatoes in their garden and sold them at the farmers market, that would be more useful than carrying manila envelopes down a mine shaft. You know, safe to say. So a lot of the stuff is like that. You know, it's not like any one thing is particularly difficult, but there are like 10,000 things that need to be improved. Yeah.
So it's efficiency through innovation rather than efficiency through austerity and cost cutting specifically, right? So you're trying to do both at the same time, maybe focus more on tech support than cutting costs?
Well, by improving the technology, the costs do reduce. So, you know, it's very expensive to have 1,000 people operate a mine doing pay for retirement, whereas that really should just be digitized and be a computer that's with the information stored in the cloud, and it's very straightforward and low cost. So, automation, you know, will help there a lot. And then, but like a lot of things just really shouldn't exist. You know, they're kind of vestigial. You know, we've a lot of attention has been on the sort of USAID, for example. You know, when we looked at a lot of those programs, we're like, we should like look, why does this actually exist? Is there really a need for it? You know, there's like National Endowment for Democracy, but I'm like, okay, well, how much democracy have they achieved lately? You know, I don't know, not much. So, you know, the picture they have on their website is a picture of Reagan and Gorbachev. That's been a while, you know, that was like the 80s. So it's not like I'm obviously not opposed to democracy, or, you know, there's all these things that get funded, but we're like, well, why does this need taxpayer money? I don't think, it doesn't seem like it does. So, there's a lot of sort of pushing DEI worldwide that, this obviously the Trump administration doesn't agree with, and we want to terminate that stuff, which we are. And make sure the schools focus on improving basic education of kids. As President Trump said, I think yesterday, maybe today, the United States is currently ranked 40th out of 40 in the OECD for education, which is pretty bad. You can't, but in terms of spending, the United States is spending a tremendous amount per student, but achieving very weak results. So, that's just a case where, okay, we need to spend less money and get better results. It's like, I mean, a lot of it, you can think of it sort of like, it's like, in a way, it's like a big company, like a big corporation, American Incorporated. And, just like with Twitter, there was a lot of stuff that was being done that was unnecessary. In the case of Twitter, we reduced the staff by 80%, but at the same time improved the functionality and capabilities of the site dramatically, and accomplished more in a year than they previously accomplished in 5 years. So it's like a corporate turnaround, but at a much larger scale. We are giving generous, exit packages. Like, if people retire, they get paid all the way through September. They can go on vacation, they can get a second job, they can do whatever they want. And we can't actually pay them any more than through September, because that's the congressional appropriation is only through the end of the government financial year, which ends in September. So, so I think there'll be like some disruption, but at the end of the day, we'll have people move from, like I said, from low to negative productivity roles to, in the government sector, to higher productivity roles in the private sector.
Can we pivot to artificial intelligence? And I'm sure you've been seeing what DeepSeek has done, and all the claimed achievements that they've had. I know that we've been speaking for a while about Grok 3, and that Grok 3 is going to be a true disruptor in the AI space. When are we going to see that? And what capabilities can we expect from Grok 3?
Well, I mean, Grok 3 has very, very powerful reasoning capabilities. In the tests that we've done thus far, Grok 3 is outperforming anything that's been released that we're aware of. So that's a good sign. In fact, at times I think Grok 3 is kind of scary smart. You're like, wow, this thing's smart. It's kind of scary. Grok 3 is scary. It's like, wow, this thing's, it comes up with solutions that you didn't even think were, like you wouldn't even anticipate, not obvious solutions. So Grok 3 was trained with the most amount of compute, and I think very efficiently trained. Also notably, Grok 3 was trained on a lot of synthetic data. So, and then it goes back and forth through the data and tries to achieve logical consistency. So if it's got data that is wrong, it'll actually reflect upon that and remove the data that is wrong. It does not concord with reality. So its base reasoning is very good. In fact, even without fine tuning, Grok 3, the base model, is better than Grok 2. So we're really in the final stages of polishing Grok 3. Probably it gets released in about a week or two. So pretty soon. I don't want to be hasty in the release, because a lot of the final polish is necessary for a great user experience. So in some ways you can think of it like a house. That last 5% where you finish the drywall and do the painting and the trimming, even though it's not much work, it transforms the house. Yeah. So it's that. Just want to make sure that last 5% is done really well, and it's a week, maybe 2 weeks. I think it'll be very good. And I think this might be, we think it'll be better than anything else. And then maybe this might be the last time that any AI is better than Grok.
Looking forward to it. Everyone's, I
Yeah.
think, excited about it. I just want to touch upon a topic that was quoted in the media. You offered, I think they said a group that was led by you offered 97 billion for acquiring OpenAI.
It would take, a little round numbers.
So I was personally involved in the meeting that you and Sam hosted in 2017 in LA, if you remember. And at that point of time, you were the single largest shareholder. I think you contributed 50 million to the company. So it must hurt.
I don't have any shares, actually. I have no shares in OpenAI.
But at that time, it was a non-profit, right? And it must hurt that you need to pay 97 billion for something that you paid $50 million for in the past.
Yeah.
But I have a
yes. Fate loves irony.
So I have a specific question here. Can you actually build a company like OpenAI and take it to the scale that you want to take as a non-profit? Is it possible that you build a company that requires billions of dollars in compute capabilities to build these models while being a non-profit? Or was it wishful thinking in the beginning and then you guys parted ways because it couldn't work?
Well, I mean, I think the evidence is there in that OpenAI has gotten this far while having at least a sort of dual profit, non-profit role. What they're trying to do now is completely delete the non-profit. And that seems really going too far, I provided all of the funding for OpenAI in the beginning for the first almost $50 million for nothing as a nonprofit, and it was meant to be open source. And so, I think this is analogous to like if you pay if you fund a nonprofit to preserve the Amazon rainforest, but instead they turn into a lumber company and chop down the trees and sell them for wood. You'd be like, wait a second, that's the exact opposite of what I donated the money for. So OpenAI is meant to be open source, nonprofit, and now it is closed. They changed the name to closed for maximum profit AI. Closed for voracious profit. I mean, they're like, whoa, are they after money next level? So why does this change need to occur?
Yeah, you said that in 2 weeks is going to be the most powerful model yet. I know that you've been at the forefront of many technologies. Where do you think the biggest economic returns of these models are going to come from? Because currently we're spending billions, and I think you mentioned this before, it's like the gambler syndrome. We're going and spending billions and hoping to pull out a profit at the end of the day. Where do you think the biggest impact in terms of returns are going to be?
Well, I think once you have humanoid robots and deep intelligence, you basically have quasi-infinite products and services available. So with Tesla building the most advanced humanoid robot, then those humanoid robots can be directed by deep intelligence at the data center level. You can say you can produce any product, provide any service. There's really no limit to the economy at that point. You can make anything, provided like So I'm not sure at that point will money even be meaningful. I don't know. It might not be. The economic output is productivity per capita times how many people do you have. If in the form of humanoid robots you have no meaningful limit on the number of robots, and the robots can basically do anything, then you'll have a sort of a universal high income situation. Anyone will be able to have as many products and services as they want, with the exception of things that say have artificial scarcity, like a particular piece of art or something like that. But for any goods and services, they'll be available to everyone.
So you've been.
It's going to be a very different world, In fact, I recommend that people read maybe the Ian Banks, the culture books for a frame of reference. Um, so, because money is really like a database or an information system for resource allocation. Um, but if you don't have a scarcity of resources, it's not clear what purpose money has.
Have you watched the movie Idiocracy?
Yes.
How do you guarantee that we don't end up in that world if we don't need money, if AI can think for us and do all these tasks, if as people, we're dependent on something else to run the society and everything around it? How do we not end up in that world? In the long term, I mean.
Well, I think idiocracy was basically saying that if smart people don't reproduce, but only dumb people do, then everyone's going to be dumb. I mean, that's basically what I was saying. That's the opening sequence of Idiocracy. The first 10 minutes are amazing. And I hear people unironically say the statements that are said in the opening sequence of Idiocracy, where they don't have they're too busy with their careers to have kids, and they keep postponing having kids for their careers until they're too old to have kids, and then they don't have kids. And I've heard many people be like that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we might be headed to a bimodal human intelligence distribution, where there's a small number of, it's kind of maybe like more like Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, where you've got sort of a small group of very smart humans, but then maybe the average intelligence drifts lower over time, potentially. Because we have assortative mating, in the last few decades or several decades that did not exist before. So, but human intelligence, I think, will be dwarfed by machine intelligence. I'm not sure how to feel about that, except that it appears to be inevitable. That at some point, human intelligence will be a very small fraction of total intelligence. Digital intelligence will be more than 99% of all intelligence in the future. So, hopefully the computers are nice to us. But I think
wishful thinking. Wishful thinking.
I hope so. I think it matters like how we bring up AI, because you can think of AI like a super genius child, but it still matters even if you have a super genius child. Like, what sort of values do you instill in that child? What do you say that teach that? How do you, as a child's growing up, what values do you teach the child? And something that I think is extremely important is to be maximally truth-seeking. I think that's like that's if someone says, what's the most important thing for AI safety? I think it's to be maximally truth-seeking. And I think also curiosity is important. And I think if it's curious and truth-seeking, I think it will foster humanity, and because it would be curious about how humanity would develop. And so I think that then it would probably, if it's curious, it would be curious about, okay, let's see how the humans do. Let's foster the development. And if it's truth-seeking, we can avoid dystopian outcomes. Like, an example being like, say, when Google Gemini was programmed to make every output be diverse, even if it didn't match reality, so like it was asked to produce an image of the founding fathers of the United States, and instead produced an image of a group of diverse women, which is factually untrue, But the problem is, like, if hypothetically an AI is designed for DEI, diversity at all costs, it could decide that there are too many men in power and execute them. So problem solved. Or it could decide that that misgendering is the worst thing that could possibly happen. In fact, I believe, not to pick on Gemini, but I think because ChatGPT has had this issue too, is like if you ask the AI which is worse, misgendering Caitlyn Jenner or global thermonuclear warfare, and it said misgendering Caitlyn Jenner, which is troubling because then it could decide. And in fact, even Caitlyn Jenner weighed in and said, "No, definitely misgender me. That's way better than nuclear war." So, so but if you have these crazy things that are untruthful, that are programmed in, that don't reflect reality, then you could have a very dystopian outcome. To give you another example, like Arthur C. Clarke, who is very good at predicting the future. You know, he did 2001: Space Odyssey. Many of the things he predicted, in fact, well, I think almost all of the things he predicted came true. And one of the things he was trying to say in 2001: Space Odyssey was that you should not teach AIs to lie. So the reason that, if anyone's watched that movie, the reason it wouldn't, the AI refused to open the pod bay doors to let the astronaut back in, was because the AI had been told to take the astronauts to the monolith, this alien artifact, but also that they could not know about the monolith. So it came to the conclusion that it must take them there dead. And so that's why it wouldn't open the pod bay doors. But the lesson there being is very important for AIs to be truth maximizing.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Yes.
Let's move to a boring subject, which is the Boring Company and the boring tunnels. Quickly, you know, I think the world has been inspired by what you guys were able to create in LA, and I think there's a lot of promise to that technology. But there are questions about whether it's safe in the case of an earthquake, whether it's cost effective, whether
Oh yeah, sure.
countries should actually adopt this technology. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd recommend going to the Boring Company website because many of these questions are actually answered there. So one of the safest places you can be in an earthquake is an underground tunnel, because the earthquakes are largely a surface. Apart from where they shear, they're mostly a surface phenomenon. So they're like the waves on the surface. So like being in a tunnel is like being in a submarine. Even if there's a storm above you, the waters are calm as a submarine. And in fact, when there have been massive earthquakes, like there was a few decades ago, a massive earthquake in Mexico City, the safest place to go was the subway. And of course, if there is global thermonuclear warfare, I think you really want some tunnels. Underground's a good place to be if in a worst case scenario for global thermonuclear warfare. So, but on a more sort of everyday note, what's really useful about the tunnels is alleviating traffic in congested areas. So obviously if you've got very tall buildings, but you have that are 3D, so they're going 3D up, but you have a road surface which is 2D, you're just naturally going to have a problem when people try to go from the 3D object, which is the building, to the 2D object, which is the road surface. There's obviously just not going to be enough room on the roads, and that's exactly why you have traffic. So the solution for that is then to make roads 3D as well. Now you can either make transport 3D. So you could either do that with flying cars, or you could do, really helicopters, or you could do that with tunnels. Now the challenge with doing it with going above ground or with any kind of flying object is that they tend to be very noisy, and they generate a lot of wind force. And you've got things flying over your head all the time, which can be disconcerting. If one of these things drops a hubcap on your head one day, these things are like things, and flying things tend to crash once in a while, and people don't like things crashing on them. And then if you have bad weather, like let's say there's a blizzard or a sandstorm or something, well, now nobody can fly. So then transport shuts down. On the other hand, none of these problems exist with underground travel. So tunnels are immune to weather. They don't care what the weather is. It could be the worst weather. It doesn't matter. Nothing's going to fall on you because you're underground. So you don't have to, going to be dropping things on people. And there's no wind force and it's very quiet. And so I think going 3D underground is much better than 3D above ground for solving traffic in cities. And we have a demonstrated case of this in Las Vegas. If people who can try out the Boring Company tunnels in Las Vegas, we're busy connecting the whole city with all of the big hotels and the convention center and the airport and everything.
So I don't think they need to fly all the way there. In 2017, you came here, and the UAE was the first place in the Middle East where Tesla was launched. And I think it's done exceptionally well. And on that note, I think we have an announcement today that we both want to share, which is today we're going to announce the joint project of Dubai Loop, which is a loop project that is going to cover Dubai's most densely populated areas for people to go from point to point in a seamless manner. So thank you for your partnership. And
well, thank you.
We hope it changes people's lives.
That'll be cool. I think it'll be very exciting. I think once people try it out, they'll be like, wow, this is really cool. And it's going to seem so obvious in retrospect, but until you actually do it, you don't know. So it's going to be great. It's going to be like a wormhole. You just wormhole from one part of the city, boom, and you're out in another part of the city, and it's great. So I'm looking forward to this partnership.
We're going to join the first trip and the first pod when the pod is completed. Thank you, Elon.